What's going on, guys? A little update on the boosted RSX. The other day I went to go drive it, and when I pulled it out of the garage, I saw coolant, little drops of coolant in the garage. So I took a look at it, and one of my heater hoses back here, well, it's under the turbo manifold, is leaking. I need to address that, and also one of my back passenger tires are low. It has a slow leak, so I need to see what's happening with that. And the other day, this came in the mail. So I went out and bought a brand new LSD. It's the M Factory LSD. Saw in the other video, the one I got for 20 bucks was shot, so I had to order another one. So today, I'm gonna start the process of pulling my transmission. I'm gonna have to take all this stuff off, just so I can get down to these bolts around the bell housing and all that. So it's gonna be a little lengthy process, but I'm gonna start on it today. And oh, I got one other thing. When I have the transmission out, I'm going to fix that first gear problem that I mentioned about in the other video, where it won't let me go in the first. So I'll be taking that apart, seeing what's going on with that. In the process, I'm probably gonna swap over these gears. These gears are from an EP3, so this is 5-gear set, 5-speed. So depending on how my internals look on the 6-speed I have now, the Type S transmission, I'll pull those out, put the EP3 gear set in there, and just so I can have longer gears, better for boost. I also gonna keep my final drive from the Type S if I do swap these over, because the final drive is a little longer than the EP3 final drive. So most likely we'll be doing that while I install this LSD over here. So there's multiple things I need to take off from the top up here before I even jack the car up to take the subframe off. A lot of these things are going to be in the way for the bolts to get off the bell housing, and just for clearance so I can drop the transmission itself. So I'm going to have to take my turbo off, all the lines that go through the turbo. I'm probably going to have to take my wastegate because it's way down here tucked. It's really close to one of the bolts down there. So I'll take that off, the turbo, the down part of the downpipe, the exhaust, the wastegate tubing. Probably take this out the way too. A couple of my intercooler piping, just so I can have room here. I'm also gonna have to take all these vacuum lines when I take the turbo off and all that.
Yeah.
So I encountered a problem when I was taking the turbo off. Took the 4 bolts off here, top right one, as you can see right here. The head snapped off as I was trying to unloosen it. So I got all 4 bolts off. I got the top of the feed, oil feed. Just gotta take the oil return off, and then I can pull the turbo out. But that head snapped off, so I'm gonna have to drill it out or do something to get this out. But I'll get that done, and then I can just pull this turbo out. Got the turbo out the way. This is what it looks like underneath it, all these mess. But I'm gonna take the wastegate off and get the wastegate dump tube out the way, and then my coolant leak's gonna be right here. I believe it's coming from this hose here. So I need to take this out the way anyway to get to that. So I'm gonna fix that leak first, and then get all this other shit out the way so I can drop the transmission. So I found out what the problem was with my little small coolant leak over here. Like I said, can't really see it, but there's a nipple comes out. That's for the heater. So one of the heater hoses goes over there to the firewall. It usually comes out like this, and comes right here, meets right here, and goes that way. But I have it, since the side winder's in the way, and it would be touching the downpipe and part of the manifold here, I had to reroute it. So I rerouted it, went like this, made a little loop, right back here, you can't really see it, made a loop right here, like a complete 180. It came back out this way, comes down right here, and around. So right here, I have a connector piece right here, because the 180 was only so long, it wasn't long enough for me to go all the way through here, so I had to get a little connector. And so right here there's two clamps. One of them was loose on this side, so that's where my coolant link was. So I had to tighten that up. So I pretty much got everything out the way up here. Got all my heater hoses out the way. This is a return fuel line, and I don't feel like disconnecting that or the coolant hoses because I don't want coolant or fuel everywhere. So I should be able to just lift these out the way when I go to drop the transmission. So those are all out the way. I got all my vacuum lines, which is, God, I have so many. But I got all these vacuum lines that were all tucked around here. Got that all out the way, which is up here. Got my wastegate up here as well. Took the shift linkage cables off, brackets off. I got the slave cylinder down there, got that off. That's actually sitting, where is it sitting? Right here actually. So I just got it tucked out the way there. Goes back up to my reservoir. Yeah, so I got everything out the way here. I got all my sensors unplugged down here, back there. All those are out the way. So I got the car jacked up, wheels off. I'm gonna start by removing this axle nut, popping the axles out, getting the half shaft out, get all that out, and then I think I'm going to drop the subframe. I'm gonna drop the whole subframe with the hubs. I find that to be a little easier for me. So I'll drop all this together at once. After I get the whole subframe with the hubs dropped, I'm gonna drain the transmission fluid and then start getting the bolts around the bell housing and pull the transmission off. If you watch the other video of me putting the lowing springs on my daily RSX, you'll see how I take this whole thing apart, the strut and all that. So if you go watch that, you can be able to see how I take this apart. For the RSX, you have to drop the whole subframe to drop the transmission only. So I'm at that part where I need to drop the subframe. There's 4 bolts that hold the subframe to the car here. So there's one right here, there's one on the other side there, there's one right here, as well as the other side over there. You also have both the front engine mount and the rear engine mount that also hold the subframe up to the car. So you have to get all of those out, and I believe the front one is 1 bolt, and the rear one is like 3 bolts, I believe, for the mount, the engine mount there. So I have to pull all those off before I can drop the whole subframe. And I'm also going to have to remove the sway bar because it's attached to the subframe as well. So I'll be dropping all that to drop this subframe. And before I do all that, I'll use this jack here with a piece of wood so I don't damage the oil pan with the jack, and stabilize the engine since I'm dropping almost all the motor mounts. I'm dropping the front one, the rear one, and later on I'm going to be dropping the transmission mount as well. So basically there's only really one mount holding this up besides me stabilizing the engine with the jack. So you gotta be a little careful there. So I got the subframe out. I actually did it a little different than what I said. I actually dropped that jack, both sides engine mounts. The passenger driver's side was sufficient enough so I could actually drop that jack and use one jack for one side for brace and the other one as the other side. And once I had it snug up to the subframe, I dropped all 4 bolts, so there's nothing holding it besides the jacks on the car. And then I lowered one side a little bit, then lowered the other side, and kept going back and forth until the subframe was all the way on the ground. And then from there I just put it on these dollies here so I can roll it around. But that's how I got the subframe off the car. Now that the subframe's dropped, I'm gonna be draining the transmission fluid. It's this bolt right here. I'll be draining that. After I get all that drained out, I'm going to start taking all the bolts around the transmission, around the bell housing and all that. So I'll be getting all the ones down here, all the ones on the back side, as well as the ones up here, and should be a couple on the other side there. And once I get all those out, I'll start pulling the transmission off. I just got to be careful because this is my fuse box line. So this is the wire harness that's coming out of the firewall. Let's go into my fuse box. This is right here. I relocated this a while back. Fuse box used to be actually right here in this location here. And I tucked it up under the fender here for now. So when I pull this out, it's pretty close. Can't really tell, but it's pretty close to this wire. So I might undo this and pull this wire out the way so I can get this transmission off. But I just gotta be careful with that so I don't crimp any wires or anything like that. But I'm gonna drain the fluid and then start taking the bolts off around the transmission. So the transmission fluid's draining right now. What sucks is I just put new Honda MTF in here and I have to drain it out now. It's been in maybe, let me see, 4 or 5 months, maybe 6 months tops. And I don't even think I put 1,000 miles on it yet since I took the transmission out and redid the transmission fluid. So all this is pretty much brand new oil that I have to go get again. I mean, it's not expensive, but I wish I didn't have to pull the transmission at this time like this, but oh well, gotta do it. So I got the transmission out of the car. You can see all the bolts over there, but I believe there's a total of 7 or 8 bolts. There's one here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, including the dust shield. And then this one was a mount, the rear mount here. So I got the transmission out. Now I'm gonna break this thing open and see why my first gear is not going into first gear. So I'll be doing that. Probably won't really record breaking it open. There's a really good tutorial already on YouTube. I'll try to find it and put the link in the description, but he does a really good job of explaining how to take the case off and take the actual gear sets off the shafts. So I'll try to link that in the description, but I'm gonna break this open and see what's causing that first gear lockout. So I got the transmission apart. There's the top half over there. Here's all my gears. Found out what my problem was with blocking me from getting in the first. This is my first gear down here, my selector, and here's second gear up here. So if I go up, it's going to second. If I go down, it won't go to first. So that was causing me to not go in the first. If we look at that, I don't know if y'all can see it on camera, but the synchro there, this gold ring here, gears on it, teeth on it, is misaligned. So when I try to put it in first, the selector, the gear won't go over the synchro. It won't go over the synchro and into the first gear because this synchro is not lined up. If the synchro is lined up, it would go straight down, but it won't. So I'm gonna take this whole thing out, replace it with the gears over there anyway. But that's what was causing me from going in the first, was this synchro being misaligned. So I'll be pulling this out, putting the EP3 trans or gears in, and I'll go from there. But that was causing me not to go in the first. Freaking synchro misaligned. So I got the gear set, my stock ones, the gears out of my transmission over here. Those selectors right there are from the EP3. I'm just mocking those up, and got the ones here. Took the diff out, and so this is the diff. This is what the OEM diff looks like. The RSX, it's an open diff. So that means for all the high horsepower cars with the open diff, that means only one wheel will spin. So I gotta fix that problem. That's why I got the LSD over there in the box. So I'll be taking this as the final drive gear right here. This thing, I'll be taking that off and putting it on here. I'm keeping my The Type S has a 4.3, if I'm not mistaken, final drive, and the EP3 has a 4.7. The 4.7 is a little bit more aggressive. It's a little better for NA cars, all motor cars. The 4.3 is a little bit better for boosted cars. That gives you that just a little bit extra longer gear. So I'm going to keep my 4.3 final drive and pair it with the EP3 5-speed gears, which are a little bit longer anyways. And on top of my final drive being longer than the EP3 final drive, that'll just give me a little extra gear range. So that should be pretty long gears compared to my stock setup with the 4.3 and the six speed gears. So I'll be swapping that over. When I was checking out this first gear down here, I don't know if you can see it, but the gears have a little point on them, like a little nose, kind of like a little triangle point here. Right here you can see they're kind of flattened out. So that also doesn't help it trying to go in the gear. Just like a flat rectangle almost all the way around. So that is not too good. I can see a little bit of shavings. There's a magnet inside the transmission here. Let me pull it out real quick. But that's the magnet, and there's a lot of shavings and gunk on there. So I'm assuming that's coming from this first gear down here being shaved off a little bit. But I gotta clean that off, put that back in there, and then proceed to put these gears on here. So when I do the EP3 gears and I want to keep my final drive, I have to take all these gears off and put them on my this shaft here, so that I can run this final drive with this this gear down here. So I ran into some trouble trying to take the gears off of the EP3 countershaft and put them on the Type S countershaft. I couldn't do it with the tools I had, so it's been a couple days, but I brought these two countershafts to a transmission shop, and they were able to swap them over for me because I didn't have the tools. So right now, this is the EP3 gear set on the Type S final drive countershaft. So this is the 4.3 here, and these are my RSX gears here on the 4.7, which is the EP3 final drive. So I got them switched over. I couldn't do it myself because I didn't have the tools. While I was at the transmission shop, I had them take the diff bearings off my OEM diff, as well as the speed ring gear right here. So I got those off, so now I can just get this final drive gear off, put it on my new LSD, put the bearings on, put all that on, put all this back together. But that's what happened. I couldn't switch these over, so I had the transmission shop do that. So it's been a couple days, but we get it all finished, hopefully put together today, and we'll see how she runs.
Ryan Little.
Yoga.
So I got the final drive gear back on the LSD. I don't have a press to press on the new bearings or the speed ring gear, wherever it went, somewhere around here. Oh, it's over there. I don't have the tools to do that. I don't have a press or a torch. I hear most people use a torch to warm up the bearings so they expand, so you can just drop them onto the differential, and then when they cool down they'll contract back onto it. Same thing with the speed ring gear. I don't have a torch or a press or anything like that to actually put it on, so I'm gonna try a different way. I heard you can, if you wanted to, throw the differential in the freezer and then warm up your oven to around 350-ish, and then put the bearings and the speed ring gear and all that in there for about 10 minutes so they expand, they get hot and expand. And at the same time, the differential's in the freezer and it's really cold, so it contracts, so it'll get a little bit smaller. So that's the whole theory, is the bearings and the ring gear will expand, get bigger, and then the differential will contract and get a little smaller, so they just slide right on. So I'm gonna try that out. I'm not sure if it's gonna work. It may or may not, but I'm gonna put that in the freezer, put those in the oven, come back, take them both out, and see if they'll just slide right on without me having to press them in or anything like that. So I'm gonna try that out. So while the diff bearings and the speed ring gear are baking in the oven, I went ahead and mocked up all the gears, so it's not in the box anymore. So my Type S final drive with the EP3 gears, all that stuff, I put them in here and I just quickly mocked it all up. So everything's back in. There's the main shaft there, counter shaft, all that's in there. The only thing that's not in there right now that I just mocked up was the diff. So if you were to look in here, it's just empty. I don't know if you can see, like around here, it's all empty. So I didn't put the diff in because this is just a quick mock-up. I was trying to test these shifters here. This is actually the Type S shifter. I didn't change anything over. I just tried to put this in, and it actually worked. So I don't know if I need this here. This is the EP3 shifter arm right here. I don't know if you can tell right here. But if I were to go through the gears, let's say right here, I'm in. Let's see if I can get it real quick without tipping this transmission over. So all the way up, all the way down. So right now we're neutral, third, fourth. Goes through all the gears. There's that one, all the way back. So it selects them all. So I was pretty surprised about that, because when I tried to do this earlier, it didn't seem like it was going to work. But then again, I don't think the snap ring that's right here, I didn't completely install it the first time. But everything seems to line up, so I'm going to keep this on for now. If something does happen where it won't shift in the gears when I get in the car, this shouldn't be too hard to change out if it's already on the car. I mean, I won't have to change out any of the counter shafts or main shaft or gears into that, so I don't have to break the actual transmission apart. So I should be able to, if this doesn't work out, still pull this, even though I have it installed back on the car, the whole transmission, and then swap pieces over, see if that would work. But as of right now, I'm going to go with the Type S gear selector arm, whatever it's called, this whole assembly. And it looks like it's working, so I'm just going to stick with that. Here's my diff. I think it's been in the freezer about 30 minutes. Here's my bearings, they've been in about 10 minutes at 350. Now let's see if I can actually get these on. I don't have a rubber mallet, so I'm using, I guess, cardboard to handle it. All the way on there. Got part of it on. Put this over. Well, wasn't quite hot enough to actually get it all the way on. So, I'm gonna hold up right now. I gotta see if my buddy me out. So I gotta do that. I gotta get this finished before I actually completely install the put together back the transmission. So let's see if I can get this taken care of. Then after I get this taken care of, all I gotta do is drop this into the transmission, and then after I drop this in transmission, I'll be able to rebolt everything back up. Okay, I just got back from my buddy Jason's house. It's the same guy that was in the video with that big 5-foot wing we put on Tyler's car. It's the same guy. He helped me out. Let's see here. So this is what we just got done doing. I just got back. So this is the new bearing on my in factory LSD. So this is what it looks like. So we got the top bearing here. We also pressed in the speedo ring, whatever you want to call it, the speed gear sensor or gear, whatever it is. But we got that pressed on, we got that bearing pressed on, we got this bearing pressed on, and I already put this on from earlier. So this LSD is good to go. Okay guys, I ran into a problem here. I had this whole thing assembled, ready to go, and then I went to go put it in gear and actually turn the main shaft here, the spline on the one that actually goes into the clutch, and it would not spin at all. It was just locked up. It would not move in any gear. So unfortunately I had to take this all back out, because when you put it in gear, you're supposed to be able to spin the main shaft, and you're supposed to be able to see that the differential is slowly turning. But it wasn't doing that. It was all locked up. I couldn't move it, couldn't budge it or anything, so I knew something was wrong. And what I've come to find out is in the 5-speed K-series transmissions, they have this little taper cone right here. If you can see it. You see it, how it has these little brackets, I guess you would call them, right here. And there's 3 of them. And one actually broke off when I was trying to put the transmission together. I didn't notice it until I just now took it off. But these brackets, this is where one of the gears, if you had a 6-speed, this would be a gear with a matching on the counter shaft. So there would be a gear here. So on the 6 speeds, they don't have this. I didn't know this at all. I didn't really pay attention to this, but there'd be a gear here for the 6 speeds. And if you look at the top of the transmission case here, you see these 3 indentions here. Those 3 indentions are supposed to slide around these little bracket things right here that go around the bearing. So I didn't know that. And so when I was putting the top part of the transmission back on this, they weren't lined up. And with these not being lined up, they were hitting the edges right here. So it wasn't completely seating the transmission case. So it came down and actually, these are actually bent. They're actually supposed to be flush against the, well, closer towards the bearing than that. So they're bent down and out. And this one actually broke. So that's what was causing me not to be able to spin the main, like the whole gears when it was in like first, second, or third or anything like that. It was because this was compressed. These these 3 pieces right here were compressed against the top of the housing, and it was putting so much force on this main shaft that I couldn't even spin it. So just a little note here, if you're going to, well, I guess any 5-speed really, these need to be lined up with those 3 holes over there so you can actually, so it actually sit right, so it'll be free to spin. Because this thing spins freely, so it's like a guider, I guess, a filler or spacer, kind of like that, since there's no gear here. So just make sure these 3 prongs, I guess you would call them, are lined up with those 3 holes right there. Now that I know this, after I took it all back apart, I'm gonna have to order this part. My local Honda and Acura place doesn't carry this in stock, so I'm gonna have to order this, wait for this to come in before I can even finish this. So my car's gonna be down for probably another 5 to 7 days, depending on how long this comes in. So I won't be able to actually finish this whole thing until this comes in. So that's where I'm at. Unfortunately, it sucks. Yeah, it's all ready to go, and now I can't do anything. Now I have to wait again, so it sucks, but it's a learning process. Alright guys, I think I'm gonna end the video here. It's probably a part 1, part 2 type of video, but if you found this video enjoyable or helpful, go ahead and give me a like, subscribe, but thanks for watching, and stay tuned.